CTM stock is up 20% today. This is a company we've been following closely, and we have long-term positions over on the Schwab portfolio. And then we entered into a little trade this morning that hasn't moved much since we saw this spike. So why is CTM stock doing so well today, up 21% in the AI defense market, leading that market today? And what is the reasoning behind this big move? Well, one of the big things we were watching with CTM was that they've had very good financials. And they just came out with something that makes their financials even better, which is the announcement of a $66 million full and open contract to its SSI subsidiary. So as you can see, this is a contract here. So this is a contract related to the Department of Defense. You can see that they have MO&I department consists of three divisions: digital engineering, engineering integration division, and logistics and maintenance integration division. All three of these divisions support ALRE and SE teams at NOCAD LKE. So SSI will provide services supporting the execution of those things. Now, CTM processes large amounts of data for the US government, and they even work with some quantum computing companies, which I thought was interesting. But what's interesting here is they just added here a $103 million contract win back this summer or in February, kind of before spring, and then $66 million contract today, which is putting them into another level of pricing in. So if we look at their company, we know that they've recently signed a $100 million deal and then now a $60 million deal. So now we're seeing real world signed contracts of well above their market cap. They're at $1.25, so I urge caution. Again, I'm a long-term holder. I've been trading them since around 80 cents a share earlier this year, and we've been trading them quite often. And you could see the volatility. It's quite volatile, this stock, as it's only $100 million. But shortly after this contract, this $66 million, we saw about $15 million roll into the market cap. It's nothing compared to what you would see if we were seeing real institutional buying. In fact, right now, let's get an AI analysis of the stock. I'd like to bring that up. We have some new features here in the machine that I'd like to use as well, so we can get an idea on the top transactors. It's one of our favorite new features I've been using quite often. It even gives us an analysis, an AI analysis of the what we're seeing here. And so buys and sells, we saw some buys from Vanguard, and there was some more Jane Street. You had State Street investing more. BlackRock had added some, and their positions are growing bigger. And then insiders, this is where it's interesting. Insiders hold about 16%. We did see some insider selling a little bit, okay, but overall it seemed like it was kind of mixed. We saw some more sells than buys from insiders, but insiders make up 16% of the company. Institutions make up 31% of the company. So when we're looking at the institutional impact, it's still fairly small for the market cap. We could see a company owned by 50% or 60% institutional ownership. And so right now we're seeing about 30% here, and they have had some financials that look favorable. When we're looking at the charts, you can just see this general surge over the last year from 15 cents up to now $1.27. And with the current moves, while they've moved today about 20%, and over on our Schwab portfolio, it's looking pretty good today. We're looking for, yes, we were targeting this $1.20 range and up into this $1.40 range. You can see that's where we saw it get to today. But what we were looking for potentially on this chart was not just those levels. We were actually looking for up into this 163, potentially even higher, up into that 180 range. So that would put them from here currently up into that 160. We'd see about a 28% increase from here, and then even up into these levels of around $2 a share. That would be about a $60 to $100 million increase in their holdings, which wouldn't be crazy given that they have about that much or more in contracts. The company is defense. They're an AI. They've even worked agentic AI for the government. And so with the charts being where they're at, kind of seeing this surge, we're not really surprised. We're actually looking at it quite bullishly, and we have been for the last 2 years. What I like about this stock is maybe up until today, I still don't see any hype. There hasn't been hype. It's just quarterly revenues that are increasing. Their revenue is up 21%, and their net income is up 82%. So you can see the revenue is very consistent, and on the annual basis, very consistent as well. And then on top of that, we look at the balance sheet. They've been very consistent in their balance sheet. And this year is their best year as their total assets are up to $43 million. So that's their new all-time high. And then the liabilities have dropped 32%. And listen, we just did a video on Castellum Inc. about 2 or 3 days ago. And I said this company is fundamentally good. But there's a few things that they have pressure on. And this is why it's a great move that we see here that they've had recently with this surge. But nevertheless, they do have some downward things working against them that you want to watch, right? And this is why you got to have some caution. Again, look at that. At one point this morning, it was up to 162, a great surge. And so we know a lot of people are following the stock and that it is just starting to get some traction in the markets. But when you're looking at the government shutdown, that's going to play a role. We see insiders kind of selling. You got that downward pressure from the government shutdowns. But when we're looking at the AI projections, that pressure, we saw a correction this morning. It was saying it's going to correct back down from that 160 when we checked this at market open. But since then, most of the AI projections we're seeing here are actually still bullish over the next few months and into the next year, over 10% or 15% returns, according to Grok, when we pair Grok with all the data that we get, whether it's the technical analysis or it could be the SEC filings. We're looking at the government shutdown data. For a bit there, we were seeing a correction. I don't know how it looks, maybe a little bit bearish on the next hour or so, but overall over the next week here, let's see, a week a little bit red, next day a tiny bit red, but overall this Castellum Inc. stock is very much projected to go very green according to all of our models and analysis. And so when we were just pulling up and we had that top transactor list up, the first thing I wanted to touch on is that there is some uncertainty, because if you look at this, there's contrast here. Insiders exhibit net selling with 28 sells to 5 buys, while institutional ownership is increasing or is holding around 23 buys, 23 sells. So potentially suggesting some caution among the executives. Now, it doesn't determine the future performance when you see those insiders. In fact, a lot of the recent sells, this is really important actually. Some of the recent sells, okay, so let's take insider sells here. When you look at this 50K sell from Jay Wright, you look at this 90K sell, 70K sell, or Mark selling here. If you look at the percentage that they sold as in comparison to their total amount of shares that they had, that's this number down here, you could see that he's only selling about 1% of his stock here, 0.8% of his stock, selling 3% of his stock. Then you got Mark Fuller selling negative 8% of his stock. Maybe, that's something to be alarmed by. But when you look at the buyers, like this guy, Charles Thomas McMillan, he's bought and increased his position as an insider by 40%. So while there's been a lot of insider selling as far as transactions go, the actual percentage of their total positions that they've been selling is very small. So they're not actually, selling out, if that makes sense. And the same thing is true with some of the buys or the institutions. You see institutions, for example, Essex Management Company, they increased their position by 100%, 100% in Legato. You had 30% increase from Geode. When we're looking at State Street here, let's see, XTX Markets increased by 50% in their position. Virtu increased by 80%, and that's the buys. when we're looking at the sells here, there wasn't a lot of times where we saw people sell, except for maybe Inscription Capital, which was a small amount of shares, just 13,000. The big holders, for the most part, we're not seeing them sell the majority of their positions, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what we're seeing there on the insiders. And then for the bullish outlook from the AI, that's really how it looks for the near term. And we've been watching it for a while. Again, we're in a tiny little trade on the about 1,700 shares or 2,000 shares, very small, on a trading session we had this morning in our daily live trading in StockMate. If you ever want to tune on in, it's the second link in the description. We had some wins actually. David this morning said CTM. Who else held on to CTM with long-term positions and was happy with the news and the pump up in the stock? And you see Jura James, look at that. He's basically sold 900 shares, 136. Remaining shares basically on the house at this money. It's house money. Johnny says, looking good. Looking for them to continue the trend. Good thing to wake up to. Matt says, I've been adding here. Lauren says, I have some from early July and scaled out some nice gains here. And so as we're looking at the gains in CTM, it's one of these articles that is a catalyst for a reason that is not just the financial of $60 million as a $100 million company, but when we were questioning if they were going to be a good company to invest in, this Castellum Inc. We're looking at their cybersecurity. Okay, they're doing agentic AI, or they're working with the U.S. on cybersecurity, and in the Department of Defense now with this recent contract. But the real question was, okay, that's all nice, but the biggest deal that they had this past year, if we look at their news, was that $100 million deal. Before the $66 million deal, they had a $100 million deal that their CEO went out and got. So their CEO was previously in the Naval Air Systems. He went out, same kind of segment or division of the government that he was working in. He ended up getting a contract for their company for intelligence and surveillance, and that was a $100 million contract in February. Now, since February, we've been covering it, but they haven't had any major contracts. They've just raised some money. They've managed some debt. They've paid down the debt. They've improved the financials a little bit here, that they're pretty disciplined with a few small public offerings. But for the most part, what we saw was this agentic article. We were asking ourselves, okay, the CEO went out and got a contract from a place that he previously worked. That's all great. But is this one of those instances where you have when you're a kid and you're fundraising and you go to your grandma and you go to your brother and your sister and your uncle, but once you're raised from your immediate family, your fundraiser, now you got to go, go out into the actual world and get some real deals with real companies. And we did see a contract with a company that does quantum tech that was Amplitech, and I thought that was a really good move for them ahead of the quantum boom, and that happened a couple of months ago. But with the $66 million deal they just added, now we're saying, okay, they're continuing to build out those contracts as a company that's just hovering around $100 million market cap. Those are the types of deals that put them at a market cap of 400 million, 500 million. You start to look at them and say, oh, wow, this is now a $5, $10 stock. That's 5x on that investment. And so that's why we've covered them as much as we have over the last few months. So we see that big recovery today. We're going to follow them. Again, we were trading them live. If you want to tune in, get a free t-shirt and get the targets for the week. We have targets for all the companies, big tech. They were reporting this week. We came out with the targets. If you want to get them, you can get them in StockMate. Send me a message, send members a message, and get our daily live trading happening tomorrow or on Monday at market open. And on top of that, there's books here. If you want to learn how to invest, you got some books over here. Unlock the Mindsets. This is a book I wrote before ChatGPT. You can go claim it here. How do you go from ordinary to profitable in not getting emotional, no plan, FOMO, or pump and dumps versus, patience, discipline, and having a trading plan and seeing the reward to risk, all that stuff. How to learn the emotional IQ That's a big piece for investors. And all that good stuff. How to set a trading plan is definitely one that we do quite often. So again, it's going to be the second link below, and you get a free t-shirt with our current Quantum Revolution sale there. Appreciate you all. If I earned your thumbs up, hit the like button. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.